தரணியில் தமிழரின் பிம்பம் உங்கள் டிவி.
Hello and good afternoon TVI viewers. Welcome to CrossRoads with Neethan Shan. As you know, CrossRoads is a weekly talk show dedicated to discussing a variety of topics that are relevant to the social, economic, political and cultural advancement of Tamil Canadians. Today in our first part of the show, we will explore a matter that is rarely discussed in our households. As we speak, we have over 1,500 people on the waiting list just in Ontario alone for a life-saving organ transplant. And every 3 days, one of them lose their life. Currently, a number of initiatives are taking place across the country, including within the Tamil Canadian community, to increase awareness about the cause, but more importantly, to get more people to register to donate their organs and tissues after death. Here to start the show with a discussion on the myths and facts related to organ donations in Canada, I have three special guests with me. Cajaani, Velautham, Thurka, Rangan, both of them have worked as community outreach workers for the cause. And we have Versha, Prakash, who is with the TGL and Trillium Gift of Life Network, Vice President Operational. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Versha, I'll start with you since you do this, you're dedicated to the cause full time and working on an organization that is doing amazing work to increase organ and tissue donation registrations. What's the status right now? I mentioned a couple of numbers, like 1,500 people on the waiting list. What's the extent of the need that exists currently in Ontario?
You're right, Neethan. There are over 1,500 Ontarians that are currently waiting for a life-saving organ transplant, and sadly, every 3 days, one of them dies waiting because they don't receive a transplant soon. In Ontario, we've made some significant progress in increasing organ and tissue donations. Last year, in 2014, we actually had a record year. 265 deceased organ donors helped save the lives of over 1,000 patients waiting for organ transplant. But we know we can do better. There's a real opportunity to increase organ donations if we can increase public consent for donation. And so we need the public's help. And one way the public can help save lives is by registering their consent to donate organs and tissues after death. It's easy to do so. They can register online in 2 minutes at beadonor.ca.
Great. So we heard about the need for more people to register for organ and tissue donations. And last year, entire 2014, both of you spent a lot of time doing community outreach within South Asian communities, including Tamil community, talking to thousands of people through media, through various forms. I want to start with maybe getting a sense of some of the positive experiences you have had doing that work, because it's a new course being introduced in the community at a campaign level. So Cajaani, why don't you start telling us maybe some of the positive experiences you had?
Yeah, sure. So when we went out to the Tamil community, I myself went with an expectation that they're not gonna have a good response. But when we went in, I was very surprised. They were more than willing to donate for those, especially those who knew what organ and tissue donation was. And they had a lot of questions that they wanted to ask us regarding that because they don't know the process here in Ontario. The process may be different elsewhere, but here in Ontario it's quite different. So they were very encouraging. They did say that they would go back home and talk to their families about it and encourage them to also consider registering their consent as well. So that's something nice to see that they are somewhat aware, but they would like to learn more about this cause.
Great. Okay.
I mean, it's like Cajaani was saying, it was such an overwhelmingly positive experience. And like you had mentioned, Neethan, it's definitely not something that we think about on a daily basis, right? I mean, it's something that we don't like to relate to. But when we were able to go towards the events and to the communities and talk to them about it, it was very positive with what they had to say. They were willing to. They just, like Cajaani mentioned, wanted to know what the information was. And we were told, especially by the seniors, that it is very common back home to be able to provide the organs and tissues to those who need it. So why not do that here as well? So I found that it was amazing that way.
Yeah. I think it's no fault of the community. It is partly because of the settlement process for the community as a new community that has arrived in mostly in the 80s and 90s. Yes. The priority is getting yourself settled and and thinking about your children's education. I think we are now at a point where a significant shift has happened in our development process and settlement process, that we can start thinking about other courses and other things to do. So what were some of today we wanted to actually talk a bit about challenges or myths and talk a bit about that. But I think it would be a good time now to maybe look at a couple of videos that have individuals who have been looking for organ donations and somebody who received an organ donation as well. So we'll have a look at the videos and then come back to the show.
The technician was taking a really long time to find out if it was going to be a boy or a girl, but what was actually happening was they couldn't see the full heart, and they told us some more tests had to be done. So what we're going to do, we're going to put some flour. I'll bring some flour, okay?
As we were going through multiple ultrasounds, our baby at that time was almost like she was telling us, keep fighting.
Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Awesome.
Hey, can I do it both? Can I jump? You cannot jump, and then I clap. You cannot do that, okay?
Why don't you jump and then I'll hold my hand like this.
Amaya's been waiting for a heart for a year and a half now. We've been told she could wait for possibly another whole year.
Let it go, let it go. Oh no, hold it back anymore.
Awesome. Good job. See, that was fun.
Pretty cool. Thanks so
Good job.
much.
My name is Maslamani Nalaratnam. I am 66 years old. My family doctor, Dr. Lambodharan, Aruna Lambodharan, asked me to see a nephrologist, a kidney doctor. So I consulted a kidney doctor and she said my creatinine level is very high. Broke the news that I'm having, my kidney is functioning only 12.5%. I need a dialysis treatment. So usually the waiting period is about 7 to 8 years. So I was on hemodialysis for about 6 years and 9 months when I got called for the kidney transplant. Of course, there are so many people involved here, but the primary person, the most important person responsible for my standing on my feet as before is the donor. I don't think I can describe anything by words how thankful I am to that person.
Welcome back. Hope you had gotten a bit more awareness about the need through those videos. Personal stories are always more powerful when people have their concerns raised direct from them. And you had mentioned about one of the videos about the young child. There's some progress now, right? So
Yes, so the summer of 2014, she actually received a heart transplant, and she is doing amazingly well now. The quick time that she was able to recover was surprising. I mean, she was leading a normal life as a child without that heart transplant already, but after the transplant, it's been like 10 times more, and it's just such a joy to watch her develop and, you know, be able to do everything that a child normally cannot do without that type of heart. And so, yeah, she's going to go off to Disney World now, so she's doing amazing. It's nice to see
and it's also a way for you to see a direct impact of the kind of work that all three of you are doing, to see that how your work can impact you know, people that are looking for that help. Versha,
Yes.
you know, throughout your work, you would definitely be coming across many things that are myths about organ and tissue donation. Some myths are grounded in you know, gossips or rumors, but some are grounded in experiences in their own countries of origin, or concerns related to what they've seen in media or in movies and so on.
Right.
So can you take us through some of the myths, maybe one or two of the myths that are commonly there about organ and tissue donation? Sure.
So some people might think that they're too old to donate their organs and tissues, or because of their health status that they couldn't donate organs and tissues. The oldest organ donor was actually 90 years of age, and there is comprehensive testing that's done to determine whether organs and tissues are suitable for transplant. So we encourage people to not rule themselves out. Everyone is a potential organ and tissue donor. Sometimes people think that by registering their consent to donate, physicians won't work as hard to save their life, and that is so far from the truth. Organ and tissue donor registration is confidential, and every effort is made to save a life. It's only when a life cannot be saved, the option of organ and tissue donation is introduced. And even Trillium Gift of Life Network, the organization that I work for that manages donation in Ontario, we don't have access to donor registration. We can only access this information on a case-by-case basis. And once we're able to check someone's registration status, we approach the families to get their consent. So people don't need to worry about registration impacting their medical care or their hospital treatment.
So during your work, I mean, you mentioned a bit about the positive experiences that you've had. I'm sure it's a challenging role to do some of these outreach work in our communities or in any communities, because of this myths and lack of information or misinformation and so on. So what were some of the challenges when you were doing this outreach work? Were you able to get the support you needed?
Yeah, so some of the challenges that we faced were the fact that there were organ and tissue donation, and then for us, because donation is coined as money related, when we approach them to talk about organ and tissue donation, they kind of just look at you and then they walk away. So that was something that we had a hard time. But as soon as we start speaking in the mother tongue, so Tamil, they kind of stop and they do listen. They'll take a couple of pamphlets and they'll ask questions if they have any. So that's like a major challenge that we saw. But eventually we did overcome that, and we had people who did approach us either by phone or when we attended events. A lot of people did come to ask questions about it because they recognized either the banner or they've heard of it, but they wanted to know more, so they'd come by and check it out.
Mm-hmm. And just to add on to that, I mean, with organ and tissue donation, it is also termed with the topic of death. So a lot of community organizations were very concerned about bringing forth that topic for us to be able to do workshops on and do presentations on. But once we were able to carefully explain them the details and what we were trying to mainly focus on in terms of organ and tissue donation, they were very positive about it. And once they got a positive response from the audience, they definitely wanted us to come back and continue more on the topic. So that was great.
Yeah. Well, so going back to that idea of talking about end of life, planning for end of life, whether it's funeral planning or writing up a will, or signing up to donate your organs, there's a definite reluctance, and it's not cultural. There might be some manifestation of cultural views, but it's commonly everybody think that it's something that they don't need to plan ahead of time and so on. How do we overcome? Is there ways in which we have started thinking about ways to overcome that, or start talking about that with the communities? How did you do that?
I think that with youth, a lot of the responses that we got when we talked about it was, I'll definitely do it, I'm just going to do it later on. I don't want to focus on it right now. I think the concern is that if they focus on the death aspect, that they're going to it's going to come faster, or there's that, that little myth or that paranoia.
Why talk about something that you don't want to think
about?
Exactly.
But we tell them, we have to be very practical at the end of the day, right? It's about giving someone the gift of life, and you don't have to think about it. You just sign it and then it's done. There's nothing to think about. There's nothing to renew. There's nothing like that.
So one donor can save up to 8 lives and enhance how many lives? 20?
Up to 75 through the gift of tissue donation.
Right. Yeah.
So how does that happen in the process? Not all people who are registered to donate end up donating their organs because there's a certain circumstances that needs to be fulfilled, right?
Right.
Can you take us through that?
Sure.
If people have registered, you said a number for last year, 265 people
deceased organ donors actually
deceased organ donors last
saved
year, right?
over 1,000 lives. So let me just.
So how does one be one of those lucky people who saved those lives?
Sure. So right now in Ontario, when someone dies in a hospital, and the potential for organ donation actually is quite small. So in order to be an organ donor, one has to die in a hospital. And right now, as I mentioned, in Ontario, hospitals are required to report deaths to Trillium Gift of Life Network. So when a patient is dying or has died, and we get the referral call from a hospital, we do some preliminary screening over the phone to determine whether that person can donate organs and tissues. We then check the database to see whether they are registered or not, and share this information with the family to get their consent for donation. Our experience has been that when a person's registered, families will consent to donation, And in the absence of registration, only 50% of families say yes to donation. When a family consents to donation, that's when we do medical testing to see whether their organs and tissues are suitable for transplant. And if they are deemed suitable, we will then proceed with recovery of organs and tissue, which is done in a very respectful process that allows for an open casket funeral. We work with families to accommodate any end of life or religious practices that they may have. And you know, as you were talking about, how do we start normalizing the concept of organ and tissue donation? We're trying to build a culture, a positive culture of organ and tissue donation in Ontario, where it's part of the dying process. So when someone dies, they can give life to others through the gift of organ and tissue donation. There is a significant need in the province of Ontario, and so encourage everybody to give this some thought and to talk to their families about the importance of organ and tissue donation.
So one of the things you mentioned is about funeral. I think many of the concerns that generally communities have is around funeral, and if I end up, or if a loved one organs are taken, what kind of funeral can they have, open casket? Can you elaborate on some of those myths and how those myths are?
So as I mentioned, organ and tissue donation and recovery takes place with a lot of skill and tact with healthcare professionals, and the body is prepared appropriately so that an open casket funeral is possible. And there aren't delays with the funeral with respect to organ and tissue donation. We work with families to ensure that any end-of-life practices or religious rituals can be possible.
Great. So generally, you know, I know last year your campaign reached out to thousands of people, and online registration took place for about more than 1,000 people through your campaign. How popular is the online registration? Is it picking up? Is it becoming more effective? Because a lot of things are being done online.
Right. Online registration is a really convenient way for people to register. Basically, they can go and visit beadonor.ca. It literally takes 2 minutes. All they need to have is their health card number, their Ontario health card number, and need to be at least 16 years of age. So it's definitely a very simple, easy way to register. Ontarians can also register when they visit a Service Ontario centre as well.
To renew their
driver's license or health card. Absolutely.
And so on. So coming back to the Tamil community and the organizing within the community. So, you know, our community has a lot of assets, you know, media, faith groups, and many stakeholders who help in various causes. How was the reception for this cause from various stakeholders, you know, media, community events, and anything?
Event, they would let us go in. In terms of media, they would have us come back again and talk to us about certain questions, and we would definitely clear that out with whoever we were talking to. So it was definitely very supportive in that sense. And then we got a lot of feedback from the audience who did tune into the radio or TV, and a lot of those questions we were able to answer again.
Well, I think that's the main part, to have this conversation go into homes, to you know, to make it a dinner table conversation or a birthday party conversation. If somebody brings it up, there are some people who can clear those myths so that, you know, people are more informed, right? So do you see any real barriers in the long run for our communities to address in terms of getting you know, a good percentage of our people registering? What else needs to be done?
I think that it's just mainly just awareness, creating that awareness, educating everybody and letting them know the procedures and breaking those myths and barriers. And looking at it long-term wise, I don't really see it being too much of a problem because the community is already accepting of this issue. I mean, as we talk about it, they're understanding that there are people that are waiting currently, and they want to be able to help, and they want to be able to, you know, help in any way that they can, and this is such an amazing opportunity to be able to help someone with the gift of life. So looking forward, I mean, when we went to those temple events and things like that, I mean, the priest himself at Varasati Vinayaka Temple, he took it upon himself to convey that message, and it reached out to the community that way, as well as, you know, social groups like A Kunjai and fashion blogger Kish Ravindran. They took it upon themselves to be able to convey this message out as well. So it's being put out there and it's being given out in the right ways, and I think that once the community is educated, it's not going to be a problem at all.
Well, that's a great approach, trying to find community champions, whether it's faith leaders, community leaders, celebrities, to take up the cause, speak about it. You know, having that community champions model is definitely something that can go on. Talking a bit about, it's wonderful to hear that, a temple priest, a temple priest had actually taken up the information and shared it. And so is there generally attempts by TGLN to talk about faith and, misconceptions or how faith is compatible with a thing? And mostly Tamils, large proportion of them are Hindus and then Christians and Muslims. Have you gotten literature or research done on this?
Yes, we've actually talked to many faith leaders from the Hindu community, from the Catholic community, from the Muslim community, and they all say that organ and tissue donation is absolutely compatible with Hindu, with Muslim religions, and amongst the Catholic faith. And in fact, they're just perceptions or misunderstandings that people have, but there are no faith barriers. In fact, saving a life is considered supreme in all world religions, and that really trumps any end-of-life practice or ritual that people might have. So we encourage people to speak to their faith leaders and learn more about the fact that there aren't really religious barriers when it comes to organ donation.
So just to wrap it up, there's always an interest in leaving behind a legacy in our communities, in all communities, but particularly in our communities, because we've had tough lives. We've had many of our relatives lose lives in the war. So there is a bit more appreciation for the life that we have, because we could have been dead in many circumstances, in many of our families in a war-torn situation. So leaving behind something, or honoring the people who have died for us, or honoring the sacrifices they've made, and we want to leave something. And there's been that trend in our blood donation clinics. Our organizations have been taking a lead role in doing blood donation drives in specific times when people feel like, I couldn't save a life, I couldn't fight for freedom, I couldn't do something in my own homeland, but here's the way for me to pay back and remember, but also give something back in a country that you've settled in. So do you see that legacy argument working? Are people able to buy into that, or are they thinking about organ donation along those ways?
Yeah, like you mentioned, because of what happened, back home, they feel like they want to give back. And as Versha mentioned earlier, it's also about comforting for the family. Once the loved one passes, it's a way for them to kind of feel good that at least after their passing, they're still living on and being able to see through someone else's lenses. So just giving that kind of concept out there, they're more likely to consider registering and also talking to their family about it. And they feel, at the end of the day, it's a feel-good feeling. I'm helping someone when I pass on, and it's not just, just living my life and then going. I'm able to do that even after my passing and give my family that kind of comfort that I've done something good. And
I've attended a couple of funerals recently, and in most of those funerals now, their loved ones, when they're making the speeches, are saying that our loved one is going to live through the organ tissue donation that person has signed up to make, and all sorts of stuff, right? So it's becoming a conversation that's happening at viewing places in when the loved ones are being being there in the funeral homes. So final comment from you, Thurka. Young people have been the major force of change in our community, not because older ones do not care, but they have had their own struggles to settle, to kind of make sure that the young ones have the opportunity. So a lot of our success of the youth are a result of sacrifices from the older generation. But the young ones are in a position to take a leadership role on courses like this. Do you see that happening? How else can we improve on that front?
I think that again, it's a matter of education, and once that they're able to understand how powerful this initiative is, it's just a matter of taking it in their own hands. I mean, there's so many TSAs that are formed within universities and within high schools. There's so many youth-led organizations. There's so many young, new leaders that are just constantly being formed within our community. And once they're just out there, this is something that they can talk about and be able to continue to educate, the newcomer, the new young generation that's up and rising. And I don't think, it's just going to be an issue. I mean, I feel that they're already taking this upon themselves. We've had quite a few youngsters come towards us and ask us how to take this message out there. So I'm proud to say that this will continue on, and this is it's just going to lead to something bigger, for sure.
Great. So I think we will, at the end of the segment for this, we'll share email contacts and so on, so people can connect to the campaigns and get involved. But to wrap up the show, I'll come to you to talk a bit about Trillium Gift of Life Network and how can people get involved in the cause to increase organ and tissue donation.
Sure. So Trillium Gift of Life Network, we are a not-for-profit agency of the Ontario government responsible for facilitating organ and tissue donation and saving lives in Ontario through transplantation. And our mandate is to educate Ontarians about the importance of organ and tissue donation. We encourage Ontarians to register consent. Currently 26% or 3 million Ontarians have already done so. So we encourage more to sign up at beadonor.ca and help save lives.
And if there are stories in the community of people who have received or people who are looking for organ or people who have donated, want to share their stories, they can contact you to...
They can contact us, and at beadonor.ca actually we have the opportunity for people to create their own campaign, share their story, and encourage their family and friends to register as well.
Great. Thank you very much. That brings us to the close of the first segment about organ donation. We have a small video that summarizes the ask, basically, of what TGLN and community activists are asking about. But before we go to the video, I want to thank all three of you for taking the time and sharing this important information with us. Hopefully this momentum continues and we see nobody on the waiting list.
Thank you.
Because we cannot afford to lose any more lives on the waiting list when organs can be donated by more people. And I think that's a challenge that many communities, including ours, can take on. So thank you very much for attending the show. We'll see that 2-minute video about the campaign, and then we'll come back to talking about future of cricket in Canada. Welcome back to CrossRoads with Neethan Shan. As many of you know, ICC World Cup 2015 tournament cricket matches have begun. February 13th and will go on till end of March. Even though the games are being played in Australia and New Zealand, cricket fever has hit people all over the world, and Toronto is no exception. We have a large number of young people. Cricket is a growing sport in Canada, and thousands of young men and women in Canada are playing and are interested in playing cricket for both fun as well as in professional level. So I think it's timely that we discuss this topic around the hype of this sport, but more importantly, take a few minutes to discuss about the future of cricket in Canada. I have three avid cricketers joining me here in the studio to explore this future of this amazing sport. So first, welcome Prushoth Wijayaraj. Prushoth, you were a captain for under 15 national team, and now you're in the under 19 national team representing Canada.
Yeah.
Congratulations, first
Thank
of
you.
all, and thanks for joining us. And George Kanesh. George is no stranger to TVI, but he has another face to his life. He's a active community animator trying to do cricket programs and trying to encourage young people to be involved in cricket. And I have Pradeep Subramaniam. Pradeep is an avid cricket fan and also a cricketer who loves cricket so much that he's going to make a trip to the other part of the world to see the final game in Melbourne, Australia. Am I right?
That's right.
Great. So we have you here, and I think it's a good time to talk about future of cricket in Canada because more people are paying attention to cricket at this time. So let's, before we go into the deep discussion about cricket in Canada, we cannot avoid this conversation of talking about the World Cup itself. So I'll ask Pradeep, you follow cricket very religiously, I'm assuming. And looking at the teams and looking at what's happening right now within the two pools, what's your prediction for semi-finals and finals?
That's the question in the deep end straight away. The favorites have to be there, Australia, the hosts, Australia and New Zealand, which would negate everybody else from that same pool, right? From the other side, India is playing strong, and I think it might be South Africa.
South Africa, yeah.
Making the quarters.
Yeah, three of the...
Sorry, the semis.
Semi-finals.
Yeah.
Any predictions of the winner?
Could be anybody's
Could be
game.
anybody.
Yeah.
Could be anybody's game. And that's cricket.
I'm sure Australia is going to fight really hard because I think this is going to be
They
their
should.
fifth. If they win this, it's going to be their fifth.
And they're in good
World
form.
Cup, right?
They're in
in good form, and they kind of lost their finals twice.
Yeah.
So they're going to try really hard.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can undermine South Africa too. I mean, the recent games, like they are doing really well compared to the other ones.
Yeah.
But of course, India is going to
Yeah.
hold their cup. Like they don't want to let it go, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of passion in Indian cricket,
that's
right?
Yeah.
More than profession, there's passion that's shown in their team, and they have a depth of batting that might be helpful for that. Bowling, I'm not too sure. You have any predictions?
Of course, the home teams, like Pradeep said, the New Zealand and Australia, they're looking really strong so far. But I'm probably going for South Africa, winning the whole thing.
Oh, great.
So.
And we have a Tamil player in the Indian team as well, Ashwin is playing, and then you have, even to see teams like South Africa and England have diaspora people, South Asians who are citizens of those countries representing, right, gives the hope. But coming back to Canada, Canadian national team is one of those dream teams of different countries. When you look at the diversity of this country, I usually say if you look at national teams, hockey teams, basketball and all that stuff, when you look at cricket team, you actually see the actual diversity of, you have players from all parts of the world who are Canadians who are in the team. So talking about this World Cup, is there really a hype or is it just in social media? Is there people interested in Canada about cricket? Is the interest dying? Is it because of the length? Is it because of where it's being played, or Canada team not being making to the list? What's your sense? Is the interest growing or declining?
To me, I believe it's actually growing because nowadays there's a lot of youngsters that are getting into the game, that are following the game day by day, and it's just going to take time for it to grow. But like it's growing for now.
Do you see a growth in interest among people?
There's certainly growing interest. The length of the game has a lot to do with it, right? If you see most of the North American games, 2, 3, 4 hours max. So the shorter formats,
2020,
T20, will have a better impact, right? Certainly not test matches, even the 50-over match. And given that it's happening in Australia and New Zealand, the time zone is a big factor. You got to be up at 10 and right through the night, and then to think that you have to go to work the next day, unless it's your home team, your team, or the game to watch, the interest is going to be a 50-50 thing.
It's not something you can PVR and watch. That
but
by the time you watch it, scores are all over the social media and so on, right?
No, your first call is, did you hear the score?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You can't hang up on your friend.
Yeah.
or you get up, look at your phone, and now with, as you said, all the SMSs, the score is right there.
Yeah.
Right? So PVR is out of the
and it's
question.
expensive as well. I'm not too sure why it's $200 plus to watch cricket when we need to be encouraging. You know, I'm not too. Again, it's a matter of demand and supply kind of question. But these things add up to the hype. You know, how much is it? You know, is it readily available? Is it something that that we can watch within a certain period of time, and so on? Because without fans, the sports can't grow. But we've seen that T20 has changed things a bit. Cricketers are being paid a bit more because they're part of the tournaments. You know, cricketers, amazing cricketers 20, 30 years ago would have not made even 1/100th of the money that some of the cricketers are making today, right? So again, profession also means, is there financial benefits to it? So let me come to you. You're a young cricketer. Can Canada get to a stage where cricketers are full-time, that they're not working somewhere else and being cricketers for the national team? What would it take to get there?
Well, first of all, you need to have the facilities and to be able to play cricket 24/7. Like other countries like India, Australia, they have the weather, they have facilities. For us, unfortunately, we don't have a summer throughout the whole year. But maybe if we get in a few years, I don't know, but if it grows on and people, youngsters get into the game, and government, like if they all help us out, maybe you could get players playing out throughout the year and professional, rather than just playing as a hobby.
What got you interested in cricket? How old were you when you came to this country? Were you born here?
I was born here.
Okay, what got you in?
For me, it's cricket's around my family.
Family, okay.
I don't even remember the first time I started playing. But yeah, just watching with my family, then going to games, watching games from a young age. I just got straight into it.
Do your friends understand this, or do they make, it might be a personal question, do they make comments about cricket that are just like, you know, not serious and, you know?
Well, when they first hear about it, they're not, most of them are new to the game, or they're just hearing about it. But after you explain for a few times, they get into it and they realize it's a fun game, it's a serious game. And around the world, it's very popular too.
Yeah. Now, you're not completely big age gap, but you're technically a different generation from him.
Absolutely.
If I can say so politely.
No worries. Absolutely.
Your generation, many of your peers loved cricket and went to schools in homeland where, you know, cricket was loved so much. But when they came here, they couldn't continue playing, or they couldn't continue to, even as a hobby, play in areas, right? Has the interest among them died, or are they still continuing?
No, there is still vested interest. A lot of interest. We talk cricket. You know, that's the root behind the whole thing. If you talk, then you tend to do. Right? So we continue to talk. We, as much as possible, still involve ourselves, play. Now, how do we keep that going, and how do we keep that interested into our younger generations? That's where the challenge comes, right? So when you have competing sports and things like hockey, football, and baseball, and you see the economics behind that, where they're talking millions of dollars and all that, however much you talk about cricket, to tell your you know, your son or whoever, and to say, you get into this game, well, you may not make as much as a hockey player, but it's a fun game. See, it's even hard to explain it that way.
Great.
So the economics behind the game has to change.
Yeah, and I think cricket is adapting a bit to the surrounding pressures of different games. George, you've been an animator in our community, you know, starting new programs, supporting local initiatives, and so on. So the growth of cricket is somewhat dependent on people like you who spend the time to initiate processes, whether it's getting grounds or getting you know, teams together and so on. So what has your experience been, and you know, what were some of the challenges? What are some positive experiences of successes that you've seen in the community?
I mean, I have performed a role back in the days in the municipal level and just supporting some cricket initiatives across Toronto. The exponential, you know, the growth and the interest of cricket has had major impact in our, you know, even the infrastructures and programs, so on and so forth, right? So there's always a question of, you know, can we really build this, you know, the game? Can we actually build infrastructure or build the programs within the community? So can we create an interest within the community level? That was always a question. Throughout my experience, we ran programs across Toronto, like even the community centers, and try to kind of spark an interest in the in a leisure level or recreation level, they call it, and then try to kind of encourage the kids or try to kind of fulfill those needs. It was truly successful. I mean, there were like number of successful programs, I would say. Times there was kids sent to England to play cricket as part of one of the exchange programs done by CMA Canada. Even Cricket Canada, like our national body, had like some amazing development programs across Toronto and stuff. So I would say I have seen a lot of interest, and the initiatives that we have rolled out was really successful. But as of now, I'm not sure where we're actually heading.
Yeah. I mean, physical activities among young people is declining regardless. I mean, there's a lot of video, TV-based things and so on, playing everything. Active basketball player on a video game. So cricket has that purpose as well to kind of get people out and making sure that they are physically active. But we also saw a large number of young people as a part of the settlement process when they came. I came to Canada at the age of 16, and I joined the cricket team in my school. That was one part I felt like I belonged to the school. If a sense of belonging to this country came through that particular thing, because if I didn't have my sport that I'm used to, and if I had to learn something new, I would have not been able to, right? So there's a bit of a settlement. But a lot of young people do this for pleasure over the weekends. Flemington Park, and not now, but there are a lot of Markham and Scarborough clubs, and mostly tennis ball, softball type cricket. But is that serving a social purpose in our community? I think isolation in terms of community spirit.
Certainly do. I mean, whatever the physical activity is good for for your well-being, as well as as a community as a whole, right? You're providing an opportunity for a whole bunch of young people to come down and do certain things. I mean, do positive things rather than going out and doing whatever you are not supposed to do. So definitely it's serving the purpose, and it is also actually creating an interest about cricket amongst others. Like their peers are kind of learning about it, and they're actually going to try it, and so it's definitely serving the purpose. But in a long run, I think sustaining that will be definitely an issue. Just because the business model or some sort of model behind it might not really support it. But to answer your question, that's amazing.
But to have a business model, it has to be deliberate. It won't be happening by itself, right? There has to be deliberate focus to invest. And so maybe I can get a sense of what Cricket Canada is. And many people may not even know, even cricket enthusiasts may not know that there's a group, there's an established government body called Cricket Canada, right? A government-supported body called Cricket Canada to develop that sport in Canada. What do they do, and how has that helped young cricketers like you?
Okay, well, each country has their own cricket board. So Cricket Canada is basically Canada's board. And what they do is, that's where all the top players in the country, they come out to play under the team as Canada, whether it's the senior team or the women's team or the under-19s team. And they provide us with facilities to train properly, or high performance training, just to play well at the top level of cricket.
And do you feel that this might be a bit of an overloaded question, do you feel that there's enough attention and investment from governments for cricket, or there needs to be more, or where should the investment be?
At this moment, I don't think there's not enough for us. But yeah.
I mean, in places like Melbourne and places like South Markham, a lot of South Asians, first generation South Asian youth who want to play cricket, but no space for it, right? And whereas in Melbourne you have community recreation center with 2 hockey rinks, but large South Asian population that wants to play cricket but no space, right? So space is going to be a critical thing. Now, you talked about economics of the thing. One of the economics is about government's investment into the sport, right?
Government and other businesses,
private business
of course,
investment as well, right? But to have a community development model, to have young people be supported, is there a future advocacy that community needs to do as a community to push for it?
Well, here's the thing. You got to look at the game itself. It's not cheap. All right? You play a proper game of cricket, the ball has to be changed every game, every inning for that matter, right? Whereas soccer, one ball, your own pair of boots, and you're good, right? Cricket is not that way. So it starts at home, and then the community, local businesses, if they get all involved, they keep pushing, then that will stem the next growth.
I think to answer your previous question, I mean, the infrastructure has been a challenge for Canada for quite a long time, particularly in cricket. Just because we have only 3 to 4 months of weather where we can play actively outside.
That's looking like it's getting shorter and shorter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
It's getting shorter and shorter, and we have almost more than 10,000 avid cricket players, professional players, and we have the largest league in Canada, based in Toronto, and GTA. The facilities it's not there. I mean, if you see City of Toronto, they have about, I think, 19 cricket grounds, and Mississauga has some, and Ajax has some, and Brampton has a few. So there are facilities, but still it's not enough. And also there's always a question and always a challenge or discussion or debate or whatever you call it. We don't have a cricket stadium. Every time we talk about it, there's a group trying to kind of get to that stage, but so far we haven't reached that.
So we cannot have international competition level sports here.
King
City had.
we had national cricket games here, international games
we don't
here.
have the facilities.
We don't have the facility to actually run a commercial cricket. Cricket. Canada has lost number of opportunities just because we couldn't really hold a certain number of people, and we didn't have those particular commercial elements. But we had international games though. But to move on, I think there's always building new ground. So can we get the political will, or can we get the direction? That will be a key. In fact, there's always a question about some baseball diamonds are being unused. Why don't you convert that into a cricket ground? There's always political questions around those sports, and sometimes you can put one sport against another sport, and then when you talk about that, then there are plenty of baseball groups are going to come and play there. So there are number of political elements as well. But
allocation of space is a very political.
it's definitely a political stage. But I would say there should be a direction toward having more infrastructure for cricket, and also more political will. I mean, in the end, the interest has to come from our governments to actually develop this game, because we have more potential here in Ontario. Even revenue. If you really look at in a revenue model, we have exponential revenue models based in cricket in Ontario.
Talking about revenue, and both on an equity point of view, as well as in terms of business case, getting women involved in cricket is critical, both for a business case as well as on an equity basis. All sports have women and men sports, though obviously there's a bit of a male domination in sports and how it's covered in media and so on. But is there a growth in women's cricketers in Canada? Is there a focus on it? Do you see young women cricketers around in your circles?
For now, this is a women's team, like I told you earlier, and compared to a few years ago, I never knew there was, but now they're growing. The women's sport is growing for cricket, but I think to get it more involved, they have to be more advertised, and so a lot of girls.
People need to know.
Yeah, people need to know, because there may be some people outside, some females outside, they want to play, but they don't know about it. So
in our community, I don't see much happening around.
There are a number of people playing cricket, particularly female players. There are even Tamil community, there are number of players. Even in professional level, in a national scene, we have a number of teams and actively promoting women's cricket. Even the TND has few teams who plays really good cricket. In fact, some of them compete with men's team at one point. So there's a growth, but I'm not, as Prushoth mentioned, there's not enough attention to women's cricket. That has to actually, if you're really going to take it in an equity perspective, I think definitely there should be a equal kind of treatment for women's cricket as well in terms of promotion and development.
Yeah, but that's a bigger structural issue. I mean, we know there's a World Cup women's tournament too, right? In all of the World Cups, including soccer and other things. But hockey in Canada, hockey women's team is increasingly becoming a very dominant, player in how it's defined. So it might be a potential that is not being tapped as much as well. So we're going to wrap up in the next few minutes. So I'm going to go around again, maybe start with you, Pradeep.
Yes.
I always feel that there is a bit of a community role for anything. If cricket needs to grow, if Tamil community wants to take an active role, we cannot stay back and expect it to happen, right? There's a bit of an advocacy role that community might need to
It has to be pushed. Yes.
Yeah, and what does that pushing look like, and how does that happen? It could be different levels. You could talk about some of the levels in which we should be pushing that.
Again, it goes back to how much of funding, how much of enthusiasm, and how much publicity, the media coverage that goes with the game, right? When, for instance, you alluded to the women's hockey team. They went out there, won the World Cup, and they were instant stardom, right? Every girl wanted to be so-and-so or grow up to be like that. Now we have all the young boys wanting to be Tendulkars and the Pontings, and some of them even wanting to be like Prushoth, right? We need to keep pushing that, keep promoting that. We need to get businesses aligned behind there. And, as the old saying goes, cricket has the best advertising opportunity, because every over when they change, there's your 60 seconds, right? Not many other games have that many breaks, right? So if we take advantage of those things and get businesses involved, funds coming in, it can be done.
George?
Yeah, I think not just the Tamil community, but as a South Asian community as a whole, or even the cricketing community as a whole, I would say there should be a united voice. There's always expectation for a political will, but at the meantime, there should be a top-down approach as well. I mean,
political will is created by people.
People, exactly, right? I mean, if we really have a unified voice together, without any kind of political, power struggles or any type of kind of distractions and divisions, that might take us away from where we should go. I mean, as a country, as a sports group, I wouldn't say a sports group, but as a community where I should go with in the game of cricket. So I think people should come together, work together, and make sure to kind of pass this message to their political offices, and then try to push this agenda through the policy level, so that we can achieve something.
See, here we have a under 15 captain who was a Tamil Canadian, right? And our media and our communities should be exposing those types of practices so that others can see that and get involved. So your final comments about what needs to be done as a community to support cricket's growth?
As a community, I think it's just best to come together. So you come as one to go further and grow even more for the growth of cricket for the country. That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for taking your time from busy schedules and possibly sleepless nights of watching games. Thank you for coming and sharing your thoughts and sharing your ideas. And it's an important concept for us to talk. In fact, many of our young people are looking for more cricketing opportunities, and it's something that we have to do as a community for them. So thank you. We're rolling up with that. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in and watching the show, and hope you can continue to support cricket and continue to push for the advocacy we need as a community to have more grounds, more resources, more exposure for our stars. And in a week, we'll see you with another topic. Thank you. Thanks for watching CrossRoads with Neethan Shan.
தமிழரின் பிம்பம் உங்கள் டிவி.